Hey YouTube, what's up here? Scarecrow here, and doing a video today where I was just gonna talk about the topic of trigger choices for Excel clans. Um, so this is a topic you will see like people who like aren't too familiar or getting to learn like the game or like an Excel clan in general, where you find people ask a lot like what's better, fronts or crits, ratios and whatnot. And I figured I would do a video for people who want to hear my take on it or need some advice on how to think about it or pick their choices. Just a general discussion on it. So, yeah. I think I have all of the Excel clients out right now here. I might be forgetting one. I think I own all the Excel clans. I know that for a fact. Might be forgetting one. I think they're all here. Whatever. So let's get started with it. As you can see here, these are actually triggers chosen from my decks, and as you can see, um, about yeah, no, literally half of them I like to play fronts, half of them I like to play crits. Now, how do you go about deciding that? So that's the topic. It really depends. There's no like hardcore way to say fronts are better or crits are better. It varies. It's not that simple of a scenario. It's not just a trigger is better, um, and not like that. Like not all or the not all front triggers will always be what's best for like all Murakumo builds, and so on with the crits and stuff for other clans. It really depends. It's not like a simple topic that you can just answer willy nilly, have a universal rule. It depends on build, clan, etc., things like that. So, generally, this is a good way to start, though. Um, I like fronts for the fact that they give a lot of value in terms of what crits can be lacking. Crits are good for putting on pressure and just being like good early on. Like generally, early games you probably won't have well before you get the grade 3 and stuff. You won't have a lot of a field going, and front triggers aren't going to be that like powerful when you don't have a lot of cards out. The more rear guards you have in the front, the stronger this card is, um, and the crits can outshine the fronts in that aspect. However, as long as you can get to the later parts of the game without too much going on and be able to have like lots of field and get out damage really fast, fronts can be better. One really good way to think about it is if your deck is a deck that's like scary aggressive, you can push the opponent really hard. A deck like Pale Moon, a deck where you don't necessarily need crits because you're going to do so many attacks that the opponent's going to take lots of damage anyway. Like in Pale Moon, I like fronts because I can push my opponent to 5 fairly quickly. And once I have my opponent at 5, the difference between crits and fronts is the critical effect probably isn't going to matter because they're most likely not going to heal at 6 damage. At that case, obviously the fronts are better because you get a front and it's going to make every attack harder to block and any that can allow any attack to go through. So decks like Pale Moon here, and I would say probably Gold Paladin too, these decks can do like a lot of attacks in a single turn and can push the opponent to 5 very quickly. On top of that too, these kind of decks, and a lot of Excel decks in general, don't attack for very big numbers. The numbers are pretty easy to guard, and generally, if one of your early attacks in the turn, your opponent damages a trigger and their Vanguard gets plus 10, is more often than not going to shut down your turn or at least like really water it down. Your opponent damage checking triggers really hurts if you're playing Excel Clan. However, that's another part where front triggers shine. Even if your opponent damages a trigger, if you had gotten a front trigger, you just canceled that out, and it's like the opponent didn't get it, and all of your attacks are still going to be able to do their thing and hit. There's also the slight, not as impressive feat of if you damage check your front trigger, it protects your whole field that turn by powering up the front row. So that kind of matters, because often the opponent will swing at you, you'll damage it like a crit trigger, you'll give power to your Vanguard, and your opponent will be like, well, if I can't attack the Vanguard, I'll just go after rear guards and get some card advantage. Front triggers disrupt that ability as well. So there's that. And then there's clans like a little bit different from the other two, like Great Nature and Murakumo here. Murakumo is a control clan, and most people you're gonna see, they'll just play crits and draws in Murakumo. I don't. I've play tested around with it, but every build I've ever actually played in tournament of Murakumo, which I've done some pretty like good size events with like 40, 50 people on top with them every time. I prefer playing the front triggers. There's a couple of things. Front triggers are scary. Like you can argue that front triggers can be just as scary as crit triggers, because like when your first check is a front trigger, you don't even have to make a decision there. It just happens. Your front row gets +10. Like you can 2 to pass someone without even trying. You just got the front trigger, and it just gave the whole front row +10. Then you get your second trigger, and you're like, guess I'm passing. There's that too. But for Murakumo, when I have my opponent on lockdown, crits can be good, but what I don't want to happen is like I'm talking about, where I put my opponent on lockdown, then I go to do my push, so I gotta push hard while they're on lockdown, and they can't fight back so well. And I don't want that lockdown rush to get messed up by my opponent damaging a trigger, and then I lose all the momentum I just had. Whereas if I get a front trigger, even if they damage the trigger, it's not gonna get messed up. So there's that, as well as when your opponent's in a tough situation, like they're being locked down, as it said, critical, they're not going to have to worry about it so much in terms of like, if you get a crit, it could go to the Vanguard, it'll go to a rear guard. There's only like generally 2 points of interaction that crit's going to have over the turn. Or when you get the front, it's going to be the whole turn. When you're locked down, it's already going to be hard to survive no matter what kind of triggers you're dealing with from your opponent playing Murakumo. But I feel like when you get the front trigger, it's so much harder more to deal with, because it's going to take more resources for every single guard you do. And the idea of you're trying to survive that 2-turn span being locked down, so you're going to be guarding a lot. You probably won't have many resources left at the end of the 2 turns anyways. But if you're getting a front trigger, you're draining that much more resources out of them. As well as, I would say, like, the danger of the crit when it comes to the lockdown. I think the lockdown underplays the value of a crit. Because when you have your opponent in the lockdown, even if they're at 4, and they know you're playing crits, they're more often than not, I think, going to take the risk and no guard the Vanguard's attack anyway. Because they can't afford to just try to block everything. They're just going to have to let some things hit. And they're probably just going to go, well, if I'm going to win this or have a chance, I'm just going to have to hope they don't crit me. And in that case, now it's on you to actually get that crit, which you don't have actual physical control over. It's going to happen or it's not. And I think you guys are getting where I'm getting at with this. In that scenario, I feel like the value of the crit is undermined. Whereas I feel like if you're getting a front, it's going to do just as much work as if you had gotten a crit, if not more. Yeah. And then there's lastly Great Nature here. Great Nature is really good at just using Leopold and Hamske to make a field very quickly, and then it just starts attacking you. And that deck, I feel like fronts run better for similar situations I was talking about with Murakumo. You don't want your turn to get messed up by them getting a damage check trigger, because you feel the field so fast. And with Katamska, you're getting like extra circles fast, and then Leopold's building a field. You make a front row very quickly, and when you have a good sized front row, getting a front trigger is more value than getting a crit trigger. And then there's also the point to talk about that Leopold sometimes will just have a crit because of his own skill, and the opponent's already going to be worrying about whether there's a crit there. So you might as well have a trigger that's going to help your front row, your rear guards, instead of just helping the Vanguard. So that generally covers what I feel about front triggers. When it comes to decks, though, where crit triggers can be better, let's go through these in the order I have here, I guess. Narukami. Narukami is in a similar situation to a deck like, let's say, Pale Moon and Aquaforce here. I don't necessarily think these triggers are like clear-cut better. Narukami can do really good with fronts, and it can do really good with crits. I don't think there's a 100% right or wrong answer in terms of Narukami, which you pick, except I don't think it's the right choice when people choose to play half crits, half fronts. I really don't think that's a wise decision. You say people can argue that the opponent doesn't know what to expect from you, but the downside is you don't know what to expect from yourself. When I play crits, I know that I can just do my little pokes early with the rear guards, and I don't have to worry about like having them standing up for when I get a front trigger for them to be buffed up. I know I can just do the pokes early, and then the Vanguard can attack later on. As well as you have in that deck a Vanguard that like restands, and crits on restanders are very strong. That's why I like playing crits in the deck. Although front triggers can also be like really strong in the deck. When you have a deck where you can throw out a bunch of rear guards in the front, you have a restanding Vanguard, that's just like all the more chances to get a front, and when you get a front it can be more devastating than getting a crit sometimes. But again, like I feel like crits are better for the deck, especially since like in that deck you're already killing their field, and then you're doing your Vanguard attack. I'm having a brain fart at the moment while I was about to say. I think I've got most of it out there, so that's how I feel about Narukami. And as I was saying, I already explained myself and how I feel about fronts with Pale Moons. Crits aren't terrible in Pale Moon. A lot of people like them, and they do okay. I just feel like the fronts have a little bit more logic because you can push the opponent to 5 so quick. And then for Aquaforce, I think Aquaforce, kind of like Narukami, you can't necessarily go wrong if you choose fronts or you choose crits, but in this situation it varies a little bit more in your build. If you're not playing Maelstrom, there's a lot less of a reason, I think, to decide on your trigger, pick your triggers certain ways. Maelstrom puts in some more like rear guard pressure, and crits can combo with that well, and fronts can too to make the attacks bigger. But overall, I think I prefer crits in Aquaforce, for the reason that you're doing these multi-attacks, and generally the best boss card to be in Aquaforce is not actually Maelstrom, it is Navel Gazer. And Navel Gazer swings really big. The opponent probably won't guard him, and in that case, like the idea of having crits. There's also the fact that Aquaforce has cards like Tidal Salt that can restand, and putting a critical trigger on a restander, what do you know? That's pretty good to have a card that has crit and be able to swing with it multiple times. Fronts can be pretty good in Aquaforce. I just think crits are better for such reasons I just described. You have Vanguard attacks that probably won't get guarded. You have rear guards that restand that can abuse the crit better than they could abuse a front. So yeah, that's generally that. Then we got Tachi here. Tachikaze is really different from most Excel clans. It's very different. Um, it draws almost as much as like it's like draw power, like you would expect out of a protect clan. It has big attack power, like you would expect out of a front clan, and yet it has Excel circles, so it's an Excel clan. So Tachi is weird in that way. It kind of has aspects of all three of the types you would see in them, and that's why Tachikaze has a lot of strengths. This clan gets severely downplayed for how good it is. A lot of people just call it bad, and that's because like they either have no experience with it and they just call it bad because other people call it bad, or they've like their locals. You're more likely to see someone playing Tachi who's not a good player than a bad player. You're probably seeing bad players play it because most people just write the deck off as bad because they hear it said it's bad so often, and they just don't get to play against it. They don't associate with anything. They just assume it's going to be bad. But when you take like a pretty good player and give them this deck and they know this deck well, this deck is actually really strong. But back to what I was saying about like the aspects of the deck. Tachi's swings big, and because they can do like really strong rearguard attacks, I don't think front triggers are as beneficial. The deck doesn't get off a lot of attacks like Aqua Force or Novas or Golds or Pale Moon can do. They're not doing as many attacks, so the front triggers aren't getting spread out that much. And the attacks are big, so they don't necessarily need the extra power to be strong attacks. The opponent's probably already having a hard enough time guarding them already, and putting crits on top of big attacks is pretty good. It makes them harder to guard. So yeah, that pretty much covers that there. I think it's a pretty easy concept to understand. And last we have Nova Grappler here. So I don't necessarily again think fronts or crits are 100% an easy decision between them. But I think crits are better for Nova Grappler in the sense that Novas, a good way to play Novas is to just poke with a bunch of rear guards first, then do your Vanguard, which is probably going to be a Shurikai, so it's going to be standing people. You're going to have a restanding Burst Riser probably, but I think it's better for Novas to poke, then Vanguard, and then finish off with a couple more attacks. In that situation, you're probably not going to have like as many front row cards standing, so there'll be some value lost in your front triggers, whereas the crit trigger you can just give to who's standing. Not a lot to say on that. Novas just needs help in general to get better, so. But yeah, this is a long video, but hopefully for people who are interested in the topic, they found some value in it. So thank you for watching.